YouTube, we have a box. It's a little bit different this time. We're gonna see how it turns out. This is something you guys have been seeing for a while, but I just wanted to show you how awesome it really is. And really, actually, for me, this one's a little bit for my son too, because he's learning to fly and he's way more skittish than I am with airplanes. So if you order Real Flight 9.5, first of all, check the link in the description below and you can have one for your very own. I believe you can order this just electronically too, but I got the whole package, the whole spiel, which is pretty cool. So we recently reviewed a really cool plane called the Haboo. It has safe and it came with all sorts of goodies, not the least of which is a dongle that allows us to use the transmitter in our computer. So we're gonna see what comes in this. So what I was getting at is you don't have to necessarily get this with the controller, but you can. So check when you're buying that you get the right one that you want, because there's a pretty big difference in price and stuff. Okay, so that's empty. Okay, you can do all sorts of cool things. You can fly helis and then like all the current latest and greatest planes, which is pretty cool. The B1200, we just did that the other day. The A10, the Turbo Timber, the Mini, that's the Aero Scout. And then I'm not sure what that one is, but it's one of the helis. And then they have all sorts of cool stuff going on here. Of course, here is the disc. It comes in a regular CD case, which is nothing super fancy. And then inside of here, ooh, looky. We have the transmitter that we can use, and this is wired with a USB-A style connector, okay? And it's got a pretty long cord on it too. So as you can see, throttle stick, aileron control. This is gonna very closely mimic. It's even got the bind switch up there, that's pretty sweet. So this is really similar to our normal DXS, which is what was provided with that airplane. So if you decide to get the DXS with one of your planes, then you may also want to consider a USB dongle that's called the WS2000. So if you're not into having the cable, you can actually use whatever transmitter you want. And the weird thing is when you bind this, you press and hold that button while you're sliding it into the USB slot, which is kind of weird. But anyway, then it starts flashing. It looks exactly like a receiver. It's actually ironically similar because that button looks just like the button on the AR637Ts and TAs. So if you're not into the wire, there's a method. But some people prefer the wire because then you don't have to worry about batteries and these sort of things. And then also, looks like you can plug in for Buddy Box. Look at this. That's pretty cool. So you can do normal. I'm not sure what that does. I know it goes from mode 1 to 2 to 3. Center, mode 2, 4, mode 1, 3. Okay. So evidently you can change this transmitter to operate as mode 1 or mode 2 or mode 3 or mode 4. Oh, look, there's sliders on there. So this has all sorts of controls. So that actually has sliders back here too, which is pretty cool. So sliders are just like another control input. It's an analog input, similar to a scroll knob. You see, you don't have that on the DXS, okay? There's no controls back here. So all you're gonna get is you're gonna get your regular channels that you're used to having. Throttle cut, flaps. Usually you'd have a gear switch back here. And then this is the, I don't like using D for much of anything because I have a hard time getting to it. If you're a pincer gripper, then I think people have easier time getting to it. But I'm used to having gear, flaps. This would be my expo setting. And then this would be the throttle cut, okay? So anyway, just wanted to show you how that works, and then look at
As always.
The cat
in the box.
never fails to get in the box, no matter what box it is we're opening. So obviously on this type of an install on the computer, we're not going to show the install because that's super lame. And plus it's just going to be hyper dependent on what we've got going on. I just want to make sure there's no codes on this one. There's kind of a code on the back, I think. But it just comes with disc 1, disc 2. Disc 1, disc 2. So that thing must be pretty big. And then it comes with an instruction manual. And it talks about, it's got all the shortcuts for all the different keys. Because oh cool, look at that. So they have a scroll select there. So it's just like what you would have on a regular programmable reset, cancel. Okay. So this has a lot of buttons and it's got trim, trim, trim. This would not be a power button because there is no power button per se. It does have a lanyard mount, so you could simulate that lanyard being attached. The closer you can simulate your real flight experience, the better. And this does feel in the hand. It's similar. It doesn't have a rubber here. It's just molded plastic. But I definitely like the fact that you have all the switches and stuff, which is really nice. Because even in the DX18, I have sliders, but I've never had that on a simulator. So I'm excited to try that. And I've never gone through the trouble of binding it using the WS2000. So we'll link to this thing too. This is something you can buy separately. And you may even be able to buy it in one of the packs that they have. They have a few different offerings at horizonhobby.com. So just follow the links below. You'll be able to get what you want. But this is what we have. So I'm going to go ahead and install it, and then we will just give you a couple of short clips of using it and show you what it looks like when it's running. Okay, so as you can see, it's dark outside. We had bad weather today, and so it's nice to have a simulator when you want to practice flying. Also, we have satellite internet, so our internet is slow. It's really bad, actually. So it's nice if you can get the discs. The installation went super smooth. I pretty much started it, and then we filmed another video. And then I came back in partway through and stuck in the second disc. And then it asks for the key code, which is on the back. And then you fill out your registration information. And you can run the updates. The updates are included, which is nice. And so it's got tons of planes. The audio is probably the worst part of the whole system. This transmitter is really nice, and they have a graphic user interface. You literally plug it in and it just set itself up. I have Windows 7, so if you have Windows 10, it's going to be even better because it's going to happen quicker and the drivers will install quicker. There are definitely sliders back here, which is nice. And real quick, in fact, we'll go ahead and just do a quick flight for you. So we got the flaps dialed in. As you can tell, the audio is pretty iffy. Okay, so gear coming up. So this is an L39. I think it's supposed to be a turbine. Okay, so out of the flaps, full throttle. Coming around here for a low pass. Obviously, you can be a little bit more crazy than you would be in real life because nobody's gonna die if I hit myself. And I'm not sure why it sounds like it's buzzing, but that's okay. Okay, we're gonna throw the gear out and see if we can get it to land. I'm not sure. We'll probably crash it this time. It just carries forever. But the physics seem pretty good. That was what I was after. I want the physics engine to be as realistic as possible. Because who cares if you can make a simulator easy, then what good is it? So I'm really happy with the way it's been flying. It seems to represent, obviously I haven't flown this plane in real life, that'd be awesome, but I haven't.
I'm having a really hard time not preemptively moving to follow the plane.
So now if there's AS3X equipped on the plane, then you can actually turn that on and off. Or if you have safe, all those features are just true to form. I'm gonna see if I can actually land this one this time. This is Eli Field. There's a ton of airfields in this setup. Land already. So you get the idea there. And then there is damage and things like this. So if you were to hit the ground while flying, there's a reset button on the controller, which is really nice. If you've ever played with the simulators, it's nice to not have to find the keys. The default settings, there's elevator correction and flaps, which is really nice. There's all sorts of other things going on. This plane, I'm going to mute it. This particular aircraft is just one of a ton of aircraft. I'm just going to scroll through the list. Obviously, it's always changing. There's just tons of stuff. And some of them are more realistic than others. And then some of them are planes that you might want to practice flying on. So I'm going to go ahead and, ooh, I'd like that one. Okay, so I have this plane, so let's see how this goes. See how it says safe? Safe. AS3X. So you can tell how it's going to perform. I've noticed that the cable is a little bit annoying. It kind of gets in the way, so maybe what I'll do next time is I'll slide it through the handle and then run the USB cable over to the edge there. So there's no retracts on here, but there are flaps, so we'll put in the takeoff flaps. Now the Cirrus SR22T flies really good, so it's super forgiving plane. Let's do a grass landing just to show you how that works. Damage, pretty cool. Let's see if we can just jank it in the air. That seems about right for power. It's actually pretty realistic, because you have to be flying this plane to keep from doing stupid things like that. So my hope was that we could get a good simulation for when we're flying planes that we have not yet put together, and so that my son could practice, because he likes to practice this sort of stuff. He's a little bit more concerned about crashing the planes. The yaw is very realistic, and that's something I found on some of the simulators to be very lacking, is the yaw. And then once you're on the ground, I feel like the ground handling is pretty realistic. There's a puddle in this picture, but I don't know if that's actually going to be a responsive puddle. It's hard to tell if it's responsive. Let's do grass takeoff. Now, one thing that's cool about Eli Field is that if you come over here, you can crash into the... Oh no, they took it out. No, there it is. So that's reactive. So you can hit the tables and things like that, which is really cool. So my takeoff landing flaps are on right now, so I should probably go to takeoff. And if you want to see what safe is like, you can actually run safe too, so you can see where your limited bank angles are. You can see how the plane would really respond, which is pretty realistic. I think safe is probably maybe slightly easier than real life safe, but it does help you to understand about how much room you need to fly a given plane. Okay, so out of the flaps. So we'll go around here and take a landing. Flaps coming down. Way down there at the end of the runway. So the idea is it's actually really good for simulation. Now they also have different environments that you can do and simulations. So you can actually change your scenarios, and you can change the aircraft, and you can change the environment. So if I want to go to a different airport, they have tons of different airports. Nighttime, daytime. They also have water, which is pretty cool. And then they have things like this where you actually have geographic change. And then they have places where you can slope soar, although I'm still trying to figure out exactly how the wind is supposed to work. But I'll give you this. This is just, you probably wouldn't fly the Cirrus SR22T from this particular site. But just for grins and giggles, we'll do this. And then I believe that the wind is randomized, so you may have to actually go about setting your wind direction the way it needs to be. That's pretty realistic.
That's about 7.
That's about how out in control I would be with that level of wind. So you can really kind of challenge yourself, and we do not have the most robust computer setup here. So let me just, we'll come out of safe there and see if I can get it back to where we are. It would be very turbulent up at the top of the hill like that, so that's pretty realistic. That's cool, the windsock. Mm-hmm. So we'll reset and mute it. So you can also change your aircraft to a plane that would be more suitable for all these different environments, which is really cool. So I think right now, oh, this would be kind of fun to slope soar with. See, like I said, the audio is probably my least favorite part of this whole endeavor. Out of safe. Because it's just weird. And I'm still trying to figure out how the keys work. How the switches work. That's probably not super realistic there. But as for slope soaring, it actually feels pretty realistic. I don't think I'd probably actually slope soar this jet. It has to move too quick. But if you were to get out of it and do something stupid like this, it would be bad. And that's makes you pay the consequence. So really, it's a great tool for somebody that's new that wants to have more time at the sticks, but maybe can't do it on a daily basis. Because when you're first learning to fly an airplane, you can get a real airplane and you can spend a couple $100 and you can go out and really fly, which is what I tell people to do. But if you have the budget or you want to try to do something like this in the meantime, it would not be a bad idea, because you can practice in very simple environments and you don't have to be crashing planes all the time. Because crashing planes is frustrating, especially if you're new. The biggest part of this is muscle memory for controlling the roll of the plane, the pitch of the plane with the elevator, and then the yaw of the plane, and then of course the throttle. And once you can get those muscle memory things figured out, then it just becomes an experience thing. So for me, it took, I would say, but somewhere between 3 and 4 years to really be comfortable flying whatever kind of plane you want to have me fly. But then there's always planes that will challenge you, and then there's environments that'll challenge you, and then there's obviously new planes are always the most challenging because you haven't flown them before, you don't know how they're going to handle. And this might help with that. I think it's probably going to be more helpful for people learning muscle memory for the primary control surfaces, and less helpful for those things, because when you start setting up the controls, this is one thing I did want to talk about too, is that if you can go to basically the way that you set up your controls is very cool. So let's see what it does. I'm going to go into Calibrate. Now this is really cool. It's got a live response of what the stick positions are and all the switch positions. And then the sliders, see that little red thing at the top? It kind of disappears unless you're using it. But it's really cool to have that. And I didn't do any work to install this. I literally plugged it in and it was working, you know? So I didn't have to do any installation setup. I'm actually going to cancel that because I've already calibrated it. And you can have more than one controller set up. So for instance, if I wanted to use the DXS, if I want to turn this on and use this little dongle here, so I'm not sure if you can use them simultaneously. Maybe we can buddy box, but you see that light's on, and then this is working now. So I'm curious if this will work. Nope, I'll probably have to change that. So there's a way to switch your controllers. Select controller, Spectrum receiver. It's because it hasn't been calibrated yet. Okay, so you see that's not working yet. So and then there's a bind button. So for whatever reason, the throttle's not working. So we'd have to play with that. Okay, so we'll play with that for a second. So I want to show you how to bind this too, in case you decide to go ahead and bind a new one. So I'm going to turn that off. You press and hold this button as you're inserting it into the drive. And then you can press and hold your bind button and then wake up the controller and it's binding. Okay, so it's bound, and then that light comes on solid. So at this point, I'm going to cancel from this, and I'm going to refresh this and set this to, I believe it's the 7 channels. So basically, make sure your trims are centered. Okay. All right, so you get the idea. Basically, you can use this setup or you can use this setup if you choose to buy this in different layers. There's different options. But this is the one that we've got, and that's really nice because then you don't have to worry about batteries and things like that. But the cable does actually make a bit of an impact. So just weigh that into your decision-making process. And of course, this thing isn't free, but it's very inexpensive. And that would be cool because you could use the exact transmitter that you want to use instead of using a simulator it's really close. But the thing is, using the exact transmitter, like where your flaps are, you know, where your gear switch is, these types of things will make a difference in the way your planes perform. So without further ado, I don't want to watch somebody else play this game for a long time, but it does seem to be working well. And like I said, our machine is not new, and so we don't have a sophisticated gaming system. We just use it basically for work stuff, but it seems to do really well. So it's not as demanding as I thought it was going to be. It did take a long time to install on our machine, but it was super easy to do. And then the download was, you know, basically because of our satellite internet, took probably another 20 minutes to download all the updates to get us up. And I think we're at 9.5.0.24 or something to that extent. Like that. So anyway, if you guys want to buy this thing, check the link in the description below. You can obviously buy a copy for yourself. And if you have questions, leave them in the comments below. I'll try my best, but I'm not really well versed with the simulators. I just wanted you guys to see that you can do it if you don't have like the best computer in the world. Don't let that dissuade you. And there are settings that you can change in here. And I thought it was under the effects. See, you can change some of these effects and it will reduce the amount of demand on your system. So if you end up getting into, you know, where your computer's not keeping up well, you can change a lot of that stuff. And yes, you can start and stop recording. There is multiplayer. I have no idea if I ever use that. But there's all sorts of cool things. You can actually have this thing follow you with binoculars, and you could spend days just playing with different settings, which again, I'm not going to do that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to fly planes that I think I want to fly. I'm actually going to shut this one off and go back to this one because it's really nice having that. It's nice to have all the switches. I'm going to show you how easy it is. Once this is set up, I plugged that into a different USB port just to see if it would screw it up. So I'm going to refresh it, and there it goes. Okay. So let's put the gear down. Let's take off. Flaps are down. I'm just in AS3X now. That's probably not unrealistic right there. Gear going up out of the flaps, just in the takeoff flaps now. Getting a little bit of speed built up. Now it's flying pretty good. This is the Viper jet. I do have the Viper jet. It does feel right. I think I got a little bit of a trim issue on the elevator here. There we go. But the thing I like about this is that it's realistic. It's not just easy, because who wants an easy simulator that's going to build up your confidence? You're going to think you're really good, and then you're going to go spend $350 on a plane and crash it immediately. This is pretty realistic. And yes, you do have to practice to be able to do these things in real life. So this is exactly what you want it to do. What do you think, camera crew? Any thoughts? I know this probably isn't your thing.
I'm still having a really hard time not wanting to follow the plane. It's cool, and I think it's, like you said, it's just helpful when there's not as much at stake. Just for muscle memory of what does what and where your switches are. And
right. I agree.
I think that's what's helped our son the most, is then when he goes outside to fly, he's not thinking about every little detail because he's just learning some of it. And it's just more second nature, like it is for you.
Yeah, and it takes a lot of time to get from point A to point B. I mean, just doing a flight like that in real life would be a big accomplishment for somebody that hasn't ever flown. So, you know, that probably wasn't the best or worst flight that anybody's ever done, but it was real. It felt real. And so if you can do this, it's going to help you supplement real flying. But the key is you do real flying with a plane that you can afford to crash and afford to fix. And then you fly it until it's crashed 100 times and fixed 100 times. And maybe then you budget in for a second one. You start moving through. And if money's not an object for you, you'd be in the minority, but still, you're still going to have to start somewhere. And you don't start with this plane. You start with a plane that's easier to fly, because you're going to end up hurting yourself or crashing into somebody's car or some crazy thing like that. So even if you follow all the rules, you know, you only have so many skills with your two thumbs or your pincer grip or whatever it is that you do for holding the transmitter. Some people hold them like this. So this is really good. This would be a great starting point. And the other thing too is, I can't stress this enough, you have to fly a lot to get comfortable. You got to remember, I've been doing this for 6 years flying, and I fly a lot. I fly a lot less than I used to because I'm so busy right now with the YouTube stuff. But even still, when I was first beginning and I was flying the Sport Cub SUMX, I was flying it so much that I burned through like 7 motors. And that happened in the course of probably like, I don't know, 2 months or 3 months. I was flying the crap out of it. Mm-hmm. So if you're not flying a lot, you won't progress quickly. And if you're flying and you keep doing the same things wrong, then you're probably not going to stay in the hobby long. So always learn from every mistake. And a good way to do that is to have a simulator, because the mistakes are very easy to learn from, because you can do it over and over again. Now with a real plane, you're going to crash and then you've got like 2 hours of fixing a plane. Or you're going to crash and you might have a few $100s that you have to spend to fix it. Or you're going to crash and get in trouble, you know. So it just depends. You gotta weigh your options, but I still encourage people to fly real planes and then to supplement with something like this. And if you can't get to the flying field every day, or it's maybe too complicated for your schedule, or you get home and, you know, you're just exhausted and you don't have time to load the truck or the car and, you know, drive to the flying field and commit 3 hours, then this is a great option. And this will help you during the winter months. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, it gets dark early here. It's dark at, like dark at 5 right now, which is no fun. During the middle of summer, it's dark at like 9. So big difference. Highly recommend it. it's an investment in your skills. And you really can't buy that, no matter how much money you have, no matter how much, how much you think you should be able to do it. Even if you're a full-scale pilot, you probably can't do it without working at it a lot. You may understand the fundamentals of aviation and, the way that wings work and ailerons and elevators and things like this. But flying an airplane is much different than knowing how a plane flies. So, and when I say that, I mean like a radar-controlled airplane. It's different. It's a lot different. So ask any full-scale pilot that flies radar-controlled. It's very different. So not necessarily easier or harder. It's just very different. So without further ado, guys, check the link in the description. This is probably a little bit more exhaustive than I meant to make this, and I hardly even showed you the simulator in action. That wasn't really intentional. The other thing too is if you guys are new to the hobby and you want to get a simulator, you can get a simulator that is going to be like Real Flight Lite, and it comes with this little dongle and the DXS. It's in a ready-to-fly package, and it's got the Habu jet, which is not a bad first plane actually, and it is an EDF, electric ducted fan, that's 70 millimeters, and a very fun plane and really pretty easy to fly. My son has flown that plane, and if you fly it on 3S, which is what it comes with in the ready-to-fly, very manageable. And yes, there is on this Real Flight 9.5, which is like one of the top levels, you can fly that aircraft. So what I'll do is I'll close by showing that. Oh, you can edit the aircrafts too, from what I understand now. So you can also select different aircrafts, which is what I'm going to do is the Habu. So the Habu, where is the Habu? So it's alphabetically ordered here.
It might be under, is it E-Flight though?
Oh, it's under E-Flight, Habu. Thank you, camera crew. The Habu STS with landing aid sensor. I'm going to just do without landing aid on 3S. Okay, so this is the Habu. Okay, so you take off. So it's on 3S. There's no flaps on it. I'm in experience mode right now. Get a little bit more elevator. But you can get this plane with everything, including a simple simulator that's going to give you some of the beginner planes, like the Carbon Cub, 1.3 meter, silver and yellow Carbon Cub, which is pretty cool. Then it's got this, and it's got the Sport Cub S UMX, which is the S2, so it's a newer one. But you guys get the idea there. But you can have this real plane too, and the transmitter, and yes, you can use that transmitter with your computer, which is really cool. And then, when something like this happens, in real life, that would probably be a little bit more damaging, but when something like this happens, you don't have to feel bad, because all you have to do is hit one button. All right, guys, that's all you get for tonight. Thanks for sticking around. This is kind of a unique one for us. The Real Flight 9.5, definitely something to consider. Get out there and fly real planes, but this is going to help you be better when you do. Come back for more. Thanks for watching, guys.